Jesus, that's so close. Okay. I got to move this way the hell away from me. Are you there? No, no, no. Okay. All right, guys. Here we are. Hey. Oh my God.
I love
even at the
working
door.
from home.
Isn't working from home fun, guys?
Isn't
All right,
broken?
so welcome back to TNT. Are you ready, Rob?
Yeah, I'm ready. Turn that volume up a little bit. Okay, there we go. Okay, we're on. We're live. We are live, right?
I can barely hear you, but I hope that they can hear us. That's the most important thing. So
Then
another week working at home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm getting
Yeah.
done with it. Are you frustrated?
I'm trying to figure out how long it's going to take for I have to get a haircut. I'm going to have to put a ponytail on the back.
I know. It is so true. I'm like, thank goodness I don't do my nails anymore.
I'm past the gel stage almost. It's starting to hang everywhere.
Yeah, yeah. These are only going to get funnier and funnier as we go along.
So, well, next week I'm putting on the Hawaiian shirt so you look like I'm on vacation somewhere.
That's right.
And I promise you, I will actually do that. So I'm going to be dressed like a totally different vacation mode.
Okay, is that next week? Because I'll do it. Okay.
That's next week. Yeah.
Okay, next week. Stay tuned, guys.
Yep.
So this week has been, I don't know what kind of week you've had, but this week I've had a lot of questions because of the multiple changes that we're seeing, right, on the news. We get to hear from the Prime Minister every single day, at least once, and you get to hear him replay all the time. So, and everyone has the news on 24/7. So they're paying very close attention. So some of the questions, I know I called you during the week and you kind of helped me out. So I thought they would be good to bring up. And one of them was, what the heck is going on with the interest rates? Like the interest rates went down and then they came up. What's happening and why are they doing this? So,
well, two things kind of happened. So there was probably about 4 days where the rates really took a big drop. And then lenders had to correct and boost up the rates. And there's a few reasons for this. One has to do with volume. They were seeing a lot of volume. So almost 300 times normal volume, what they would normally get. So the only way to circumvent that, well, it's typical supply and demand, let's raise up the rates. So that's one big reason.
Can I just ask you a question there? What were they seeing an increase of? Like refinancing or what was the problem?
Yeah, mostly it was all refinancing. That's really what it kind of came into. Rates went down low. People were also in a desperate situation and were taking advantage of it. Like I said, a lot of these haven't been approved yet, but you can imagine with the deferred payment option coming through, a lot of people would be better positioned to refinance versus taking the deferred option if they could do it. But like I said, that window was so short that it really didn't last long. So there's a couple of things that really played into the market here. One, the government's printing money. So when it starts printing money, it's going to increase the bond rates. Bond rates go up, interest rates are going to go up with it. So that really happened very quickly. And we've seen almost a 50-point jump in the fixed rates just from that alone. Right. So our fixed rates are starting to creep up now to the 3%, which is still really good if you think about it. But we were down to low 2s at one point. The other one that we're really starting to see, which is where everybody gets confused, and this is where the phone call comes in. I just heard the interest rates drop 50 points from the Bank of Canada, right? So it gets announced everywhere. And that's happened 3 times in the last 2 weeks. And I want people to understand this. That interest rate, normally they have a rate announcement 8 times a year, okay? So we were expecting a 50-point drop towards the end of April, which is the next announcement. Instead, he pushed it and he did it earlier. So over a 2-week period, we've actually dropped 1.5% in prime, okay? Now, that doesn't necessarily mean the bank's going to pass it on, but it does mean that we are going to see a drop. So we did see a 1% drop on the consumer side pretty much immediately, which is good. So we've gone now down to prime at 2.95. So let's talk about the big winners. The big winners are the guys who locked into a variable rate, probably a year ago, where they were getting prime -1, prime -1.2, and now their rates are sitting at 1.75 and 1.95 on the mortgage. So there's no way you're going to lock that in. That is great. The big problem with that, though, is those guys are also creating a loss for the banks because the rate's too low and they have a fixed cost that they have to uphold to, and they're getting lower than their fixed cost. So the only way for a bank to circumvent that is to turn around and charge higher rates. Okay. So now when somebody goes into a bank and they apply for the variable, instead of being prime minus, it's actually right now prime +2. So the rate's actually higher today than it was a month ago. Okay. And the bank need to do this because it's the only way they could still stay profitable. So the discount's being taken away, right? And if anything, now it's being, like I said, prime plus. So we're not in a great situation. Not a good time to go get a variable today. Okay. But certainly those who got it before are definitely in a big winning position.
Do you anticipate that we're going to have, you said 8 times a year this typically happens through the Bank of Canada. Is this going to happen more frequently, do you think, or will they stick to their 8 times? Like what does this predict?
It's going to stick to the 8 times now, I think, at this point, only because they got nowhere else to go. So, the Bank of Canada right now is at a 1/4 point. Where are they going to drop to? You can't drop to 0, right? So, or definitely something we haven't seen before in our lifetime. So I think now you're going to see a rate announcement. The next one will come up in the end of April, and it's going to be basically we're holding our position at this point, right?
Okay. So it's not a big predictor for us in any big change that we're seeing coming forward. This is just managing their costs currently.
For the banks, yes. And for the government, it's trying to manage the economy. It's basically, we need to make sure we don't go, recession's probably on its way. We're not going to probably be able to avoid that. But they certainly don't want to go into a depression. So that's why the big rate drops. That's why the immediate things, we know everybody's in trouble. That's why the stimulus packages are coming out. That's why there's, and this is going to get into our next topic of renters, but that's why a lot of those things are coming out to help people so that we don't fall into big traps and trouble. And, and this is a good learning lesson, not just for governments, because we've had a government that went into a big spending spree for 4 years, and now they don't have the money, but it's also with the consumer, because the consumers have been going into big spending sprees, racking up credit cards and so forth, and now they don't have the money. So I'm hoping maybe when this is all said and done, and maybe we can bring it to our budget page too, that people will start to learn within their means, become a little more responsible, and do what we're supposed to do, right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, and that's great, because we are, that kind of leads into both of our next topics, and one of them is I was getting calls both from renters and landlords, and I called you again this week, and it was, the tenant had contacted the landlord and said, hey, I'm in dire straits. The landlord responded and said, I understand your situation, but so am I, and my bank is telling me I can't get a deferral, so we're at an impasse. Like, we need to have this rent covered. So, because I think there's been some confusion between landlords and tenants. Who's responsible? I mean, they know they're ultimately responsible, but who's responsible for giving the deferral? So talk a bit about what's happening there.
Yeah, so this has become an interesting one. Unfortunately, the government really kind of put shot its mouth off probably a little bit too soon by saying, hey, tenants, you don't have to pay, right? We're going to give you relief.
And you can't be evicted.
That's right. You can't get evicted. And now they're all saying, hey, this is great. I'm going to take advantage of this. And the landlords are like, oh, wait a minute. We still got to make payments. So what about us? Because we're going to lose the property. So you need to think this one through. So if you're a tenant and you're sitting on their side and you don't need financial aid and you're still working and you can make that payment, this is not a gift. You still need to make the payment. And if you're in a position where you can't make the payment, sure, definitely call your landlord, see if something can be worked out. And in that particular case, in that email, the landlord was actually still pretty smart about saying, hey, you know what, there is relief for you, and this is here so you can make your payment, go apply. And that kind of relief is out there by the government for the tenants to go out and apply for the financial aid so they can pay their rent. That's really what it's about. So it's not a gift per se for those renters to say, hey, no, we're not paying. I don't have to. You can't evict me. Trust me, when this is all over, they're going to get evicted if they don't pay.
Yeah.
And understand this on the other side of the landlord, banks aren't allowing deferrals on rental properties, for one. Okay, so that's key. So they're still stuck making that payment, so they need the tenant to pay.
And that's only the big 6, right?
That's only, well, I think that one's going to be right across the board. Okay. So just, I don't know of any bank that's given the deferral, maybe a skip a payment option, but that's only going to be for a month or two, but definitely not the deferral. And take the deferral and the other thing, the deferral still has to be paid back. So there's no forgiveness in rent because there's no forgiveness in the deferral. So one way or the other, that tenant needs to make up for the missed rent that they did not pay. And then they were thinking, oh, we can get a month free. No, it's not going to work that way. It's going to have to get added in somewhere also. So whether your rent payment goes up or whether you have to pay it at the end of the deferral, but sooner or later somewhere it's going to have to get paid too. So there is no free ride on either side. Okay. And I think both parties need to understand that going forward. I think the landlords do, and they're going to put a pretty tough stand on that. And tenants need to understand that too. It's not a free ride, that there's still responsibilities. There's still have to be paid.
It'll be interesting what happens, because with the government saying no evictions, I mean, they're really handcuffing landlords at this point. So it's going to be interesting. Something's going to have to give. Hopefully everyone acts, responsibly and does their very best. I mean, you're getting the money to pay your rent. But, and I do understand as well that, there's everyone's going through this where you have difficulty getting income, but the money that's being provided is specifically to pay your rent. So it's going to be
and tenants need to understand, landlords in most cases, they're not wealthy people who have money to throw around, right? They're simply investors who've bought property, who are still in the same position. They still got to go to work every morning. They still have bills to pay. They're no different than anyone else. So you can understand this goes on for 3-4 months and they don't pay rent, or even some landlords even 2 months. What's going to happen is the property is going to go up on the market, or it's going to go on a power sale, and guess what? You're getting evicted anyway. So you're really just you're just digging your own hole a little bit deeper by not paying. You're just prolonging it. So don't do it to yourself. Like, if you think you're getting a free ride, you're probably not. And trust me, when you try to go into that next property, you know what's going to happen on that phone call when they call the previous landlord. It's going to be like, yeah, he didn't pay for 2 months because he thought he can get away with it. And then good luck trying to get into that property, right? So you really don't want to be that guy at the end of the day. It will come back.
All right, perfect. And so then segueing from that, which is great advice, and that has been confusing. The way they presented it on TV, it's been confusing whose responsibility it is. So that clears it up a bit. Thank you. But the other thing that we're talking about is money. Like, we're hearing huge numbers, right? Like billions of dollars that are being fed in. But when you narrow it down to that individual person, it's not a lot, and it's not what's going to cover all of your expenses. So the best defense we have is to start cutting expenses. My dad always said, like, it doesn't matter how much you make, it's how much you save, right? Like, that's what matters. So now is the time, and I know you and I, when we go meet people, we actually sit down with first-time home buyers and we go through a budget, and they're the ones we target with the budget. But I think everybody right now needs to hear this information.
Right. So why don't we start off with a couple of tips, and I look at it this way, and your dog agrees. So
that didn't even sound like my dog's bark, so I'm concerned. But anyway,
that's even worse. I think he just let in some hobo. That's a quick tip right there. So back on topic. So just to get an idea, so I've been saying this, I'm not going to get too much into the virus, but a lot of people now have the opportunity where they're home, they have spare time, they have free time, and this is actually a really good opportunity, not just to budget, but to start going through a lot of the expenses that you could probably eliminate. And believe it or not, like I could probably go through my credit card, and I know I've done this, and I could go through all the expenses that came out in a month and think, wait a minute, what's this thing coming out every month for? Why am I paying $15 for this? It's probably a service I stopped using a year ago, but never stopped the payment and forgot all about it. But it's still getting charged into my credit card, or it's still coming out of my bank account. A lot of those things it's a great opportunity to go in and say, okay, you know what? Let's look for these little fees and these charges that are not necessary. And I know it might only be $10 or $15, but it's 15. Pretty next thing you know, it's $100, $200 a month going out of your pocket, and you don't realize it's there. It's a good time to maybe call Rogers and start negotiating your contract there and saying, okay, what can I get for less money? Or if it's not Rogers, it's Telus, or it's, a lot of these bill places, very, what's the word I want to use for this? I was going to say sneaky, but they like to add little extra charges onto your bill, and all of a sudden you don't know about it. But go back on those bills and start asking the questions. Hey, why am I paying this fee for this? You know, I can get them eliminated. And it's not just them, it's Hydro, it's Enbridge, it's TELUS, it's Bell, it's Rogers. But you can reduce a lot of those expenses. You know, sit on the phone for one day and you know, get on these guys' cases and say, hey, because they're all about the pennies. And your bank is no different, by the way. Bank charges are ridiculous. There's always ways you can reduce those too. Get on the phone with them and get on the phone with your branch and start cutting back on those costs. How many bank accounts do you need? Start eliminating it down into 1 or 2 instead of having 4 or 5, right? Take a look at all these extra little fees that are coming out that are dinging you every month. And that's part of budgeting too. And add that into your budget and you'll probably find you're saving a lot of money.
Yeah, mm-hmm. I think a great challenge that if we can issue to them is to take a highlighter and take your bills and literally go through them line by line, just your last month's bill. And if there's something you don't recognize, highlight it. If there's something that recurs, highlight it, find out what it is and call it and make a change. If you can do that and call every company that you get service from like you said, from Rogers to Bell to everybody that you have service from, and have the conversation, because you don't know what they're going to say unless you ask, right? And everyone is feeling
and like I said, and there's probably charges on there. And I know every 6 months we always review all our phone bills and everything just to see what else got, because they will quickly add something in, and it might have been attached in a little letter that was with the bill and you didn't see it. If you're like me, I just, I owe this much, pay it and it's gone. But nobody reads all the garbage they send in behind it. And it's the same thing with bank accounts and stuff like that. All of a sudden a fee gets added in that they've started doing. What about insurance? Like, here's another great one by a good saving tip, but insurance on credit cards, insurance on your bank statements, your visas, your line of credits. Like a lot of these, by the way, are big waste of money. I can tell you right now, they're all a waste of money. Get rid of them. So here's your opportunity to call back and say, listen, I didn't sign for this, right? And that could be, and 99% of the time, guys, you're getting charged for these things and you didn't sign for it. So go back and take a look and see what extra fees you're getting added onto that really just don't belong or shouldn't be there. They'll talk you into it because they're cash cows for the bank, right? So, you know, look for those little add-ons that are on there. And I'm telling you, most accounts I go through, I could easily find $100 to $200 a month in expenditures from a family of money that's going out the door without them even realizing it. So it's all part of the process. And like I said, you've got the time. Like, take a look at these bills and what's going out.
Okay, so here's the thing. Have you done it recently?
I always do it every January.
So you did call everybody January?
And I make my wife call everybody.
I was gonna say, okay, I was gonna challenge us, but since Sarah's already done it for you, I'll challenge myself then. I have not done it. So between now and next video, I'm gonna go through and I'm going to say how much I saved just by doing that.
Yeah, it's huge. And like I said, look at like credit card charges are the worst. Like I said, I've seen insurance costs added on there, $15 a month to insure your balance. Like those things are garbage, right? Yeah. So take a look for it on your bill. You might, I guarantee 50% of the people that pull this up have that on their bill right now, where they're being charged insurance on a line of credit or a Visa card or something in that regards that really is just not necessary. You can get rid of it. It'll never pay out, right? I've rarely ever seen them pay out. So, and it's expensive. Like you're paying $15 for insurance that would cost less than $1, right?
Yeah.
Typically.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. So that's a challenge. Yeah. I want to see what everyone has saved. So that would definitely be amazing. Do it. Okay, cool. So what about the budget? I guess if anyone is interested in talking about the budget.
Well, you know, anybody that wants to sit down and do a budget, I can definitely do it with you through a Zoom video. We can go through it. So basically what I ask for is 1 month bank statements, Visa statements, and stuff like that, so that I can go through it, find out where the money is, and then I could quickly do a relatively quick budget up for you to see if there's places that can be cut back, where you can save some money. So by all means, just reach out to Melissa or reach out to myself and we'll set that appointment up. And like I said, we'll do it through a Zoom call. Makes it a lot easier. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm going to post this video in both my groups and my main page so that the wealth building and the first time home buyers can see that because they may want to do that as well.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Definitely next one. All
All
right.
right, what else? What are you doing this week?
More videos, more taping, whatever I can more organized with. So
Yeah.
actually, the good thing is we're interviewing an ER nurse tomorrow night, which would be something.
Excellent. Oh,
Yeah,
that's
so trying to get misconceptions out of the way. So I'm actually kind of looking forward to that. She's also a fitness guru who does jump classes. There you go, Melissa.
oh
You, do
yay.
it, you could sign up and do your jump at home.
I'm doing I just did a 21-day abundance meditation thing. Now I'm doing 21 day, hey, you fell out of that, by the way. I'm doing a 21-day weight loss meditation now and a yoga burn thing. I'm trying, buddy. I'm trying.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, the 21 days. And oh, yeah, and congratulations. You got 2 closing this week, so you're 6 to go.
Woo woo. Thank you. See,
That didn't take long. Somebody's been here for a day. All right, that's good. So,
TNT.
we're signing out.
Signing out. Until next week, people. See how much money we can
All right.
make. Have a good one.
You too.